Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I am Chuck. In the month of October, we're talking about the horrors of indie filmmaking. And this week, we're talking about the real horror of indie filmmaking, which is set safety or lack thereof.
Ooh, okay, Chuck. What do you do if you are on set and an actual axe is flying at your head?
First, you scream, then you duck, then you block the axe with your boom pole. If you don't have a boom pole, I don't know what you block it with, but that's what I did.
So obviously, you're speaking from experience here. So you are going to have to come back to that story later.
Yes.
In the meantime, I'm very happy to say I've been surprisingly lucky with the very few number of accidents that I've had on set, but even some is still not none.
And Hollywood, even, it's not uncommon to have some serious incidents happen on set. Since 2002, there have been 152 reported catastrophic injuries or fatalities on Hollywood sets. That's just what's reported. So even with the large budget productions, sometimes the director's vision is focused more on the shot and not enough on the safety of their cast and crew.
Actually, that's a fun stat that I heard was that the camera department is more at risk for catastrophic injury or fatality than any other department on a film set. Just because they're right there next to the action, and therefore, if somebody's going to get injured, it's probably going to be camera team.
The camera team. And you actually have a story from a set. Do you want to share the story? Poor Danny, glamorous.
Oh, yeah, where my poor camera op, Danny, who is on a few episodes of this, is an incredible cinematographer and very patient and very kind. We were shooting Dive, the short film that you've heard about a lot. There was a scene filming from behind the truck bed as it was moving and coming to a stop in front of the Dive bar that Dive is set in. And you, as the sound mixer, and Danny, as the cinematographer, were both in the back of the truck. And every single one of us on set there, from the person driving it, who was the gaffer / also actor, thanks again, Lee, and you two, and then Sam and I and Chris, all of us.
Yeah.
We're out there saying we should do a trial run. We should do a practice run. This isn't going to be safe. This is essentially a stunt now. It wasn't going to be originally.
And I just want to say that the idea was for the driver of the truck to just roll up casually and park.
Yes.
The drive was a good, maybe 50 feet at a very low speed.
Yes.
So we weren't thinking, oh, this is going to be gnarly. We're in a parking lot. Nobody's around. I'm in the back getting sound. Danny's in the back getting the video of the actor through the rear window on a pickup truck, and not a big deal.
Not a big deal, especially when you and Danny have done that exact setup in that truck before.
Yes.
Not the same driver, but you've done that before, technically.
Mm-hmm.
So even though every single one of us had that thought of should we do a practice run, we were running late.
Yeah.
It was late at night.
Last shot of the night, which usually that's how that happens, is you're shooting something that's a little bit tricky at the end of the night. It's probably best to coordinate so that your most complicated shots are the first thing in the day so that you're not feeling as rushed.
Exactly. And you're not feeling rushed, and everyone's still fresh. They're well rested, hopefully. And they're showing up ready to do their best work and get the hard stuff out of the way first. Unfortunately, when we're shooting in the evening and night, and this was definitely a night shot, it couldn't be in the evening. It wasn't going to be able to be the first shot. And my theory was just, well, let's do all the inside stuff first and then move outside, because that'll be less camera setups and save time. In hindsight, no. We should have moved the stunt earlier.
Yeah.
But it became a stunt. And we decided as a group, no, let's just go for it. And this individual had not driven this truck ever before and didn't know how delicate the brakes were. So even though it was only 5 miles an hour-ish,
it came to a dead stop
very quick.
And Danny was then moving 5 miles an hour with his red camera setup into the back window of the pickup.
Yes.
And he basically stopped himself with his knees in the pickup bed.
Not ideal.
Yeah. And the camera was fine.
Thankfully. Though we definitely had to stop and take it apart and retighten a few things, because some things got moved around for sure.
Ultimately, there would have been time saved by having a rehearsal of that versus doing it, have something go wrong, and then having to regroup.
Yeah. yeah, it would have just been so much faster to just do the test run and have the truck drive and everybody mark it while there's nobody in the bed of the truck. And then that way we know how it drives. We know we can mark exactly where we want it to stop and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would have been the better way to do it. But on the plus side, thankfully we can laugh about it now because no body was hurt and no gear was hurt. But still, that's a reminder to me that it doesn't matter. If we're running late, we're running late. We're doing the practice run.
Yeah, it's good to have a rehearsal. I was on a set where seemed very simple, where it wasn't even an actor. He was chopping wood. And so he had an actual axe as a prop. There was a wide shot where he was chopping wood for this setup. It was him and then this other character that were having a conversation.
Okay.
And it was coming to an apex. And so the character was basically moving the axe to the side to embrace the other character.
Yeah.
And the person that was chopping the wood was not even an actor. He literally chopped wood to keep his house warm at all times.
So he's very experienced with this. He's comfortable with an axe. He knows how this goes.
Yeah, and so the thought of having a sharp axe on set didn't even really occur to us, any of us, as an issue. So we're getting a shot, and the idea is that in order to pick up the other character, he's got to get rid of the axe.
Oh, yeah.
And the very first take we did with that, I was positioning myself away from the camera because I was operating boom.
Yeah.
And making sure I was getting good audio. And the best place for me to do that in that situation was directly behind him at a 90-degree separation from me and the camera, like if the actor is at the midpoint. So I was off to the side of the camera.
Okay.
And what happened during the take was, the very first take was, he was excited, not a practiced actor. He ended up throwing the axe behind him, which was incredibly sharp because you want to have a sharp axe. It's also very heavy. I was running boom. Obviously, I did not get any sound in that one. I was quite a ways away, too. I was a good 10 feet away. Didn't even think about this being an issue, but the axe basically made it to my chest. I used my boom pole to prevent it from hitting me.
Good.
And it fell to the ground. I took a deep breath. I checked myself out to make sure that nothing sharp hit me, made sure I wasn't bleeding anywhere because, when you have something thrown at you suddenly that's dangerous and you're not prepared for it, your adrenaline kicks up pretty quickly. Yeah. So everything was fine, luckily. And then obviously after that shot, we rehearsed it. And then I went to a different position and he ended up not chucking the axe as hard. So none of us were even thinking of this as being a big deal. No. And when I was getting audio, it was just something happened suddenly. And that's what happens when you have sharp objects on set. It's not the thing that you anticipate. It's something that's coming out of left field. And if you have a hazardous object, then it could hurt somebody.
It could really hurt somebody. Actually, I was on another set. It was a horror film. And there's a scene where a gentleman, poor man, I should say, is hogtied in a basement underground cave type thing.
Okay.
And he is on plastic wrap because the person is going to kill him.
Okay.
Comes up behind him with a knife, slits his throat.
Okay.
And obviously, as an indie film, we're not going to show an actual throat getting slit because that's a whole extra level of, hair and makeup that we just do not have the budget for.
Yeah.
But
true.
so we know we're gonna creatively shoot around it.
So you're not going to show an actual throat getting slit. You're saying you're not going to do the visual effects necessary.
Oh, technically both.
We're not going to murder anybody on set.
Yeah.
That's not our goal.
Technically, we're doing both. Mm. We're not actually killing somebody on set because this is not a snuff film, and we're also not going to show the actual cut because we just aren't going to spend that much time on the special effects you'd need to. Mm-hmm. So the director and the producer have purchased this very ornate, very gorgeous knife to use for the scene. However, it was an actual knife.
Yeah.
And it was very, very sharp. Mm. And while the knife does not need to be right up next to them.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's still an actor walking across this plastic tarp so they could trip and fall. True. Holding this knife, or trip and fall onto the poor dude who's actually hogtied on the ground and can't actually move and dodge and get out of the way.
Yeah.
There were just a lot of risk factors. So thankfully, the hair and makeup person who also owned the property that we were filming at, stepped up and said, no, the actor has even voiced that this is making them nervous. And at least that actor did feel safe talking to somebody and saying something, because that pressure to not say something when nobody else is saying something is hard to overcome. So that was nice, because before then it had been a conversation of, can we not use this knife? Can we please not use this knife? Until the property owner came on set and was like, absolutely not. You're not using this knife.
Yeah.
Just hard no.
Yeah. And it's tricky sometimes if you have somebody that has a specific vision in mind and you just want to take safety seriously.
Yeah.
And we're making entertainment.
Yeah. Yes.
There's no need for me to have to dodge an actual axe.
No, there isn't.
There's no need for anyone to have to dodge an actual axe. There's no need for somebody to have to risk slamming their really expensive rig and their knees into the
or their
pickup
body parts into the back of a pickup truck. And it's so hard, because especially in the moment, and being indie and being like, well, we're just going to run and gun and we're just going to get this done, and we don't have much time and we have to be off of this property before somebody notices we're here filming, or whatever your scenario is that you're filming in. It's so easy to want to start blurring those lines and take those shortcuts. And I just don't, the juice is never worth the squeeze, despite the fact that in this industry, it almost feels celebrated sometimes when you do something risky, but hey, you got the shot.
Yeah.
You know?
A cool shot. Nobody got hurt. All's well.
Yeah.
That ends well.
And it's like, but maybe you could have a postmortem meeting where wow, that's actually probably the best use of postmortem meeting.
There we go.
That actually, okay. Where you discuss like, okay, it's so great that nobody was hurt. That's fantastic. What can we do in the future to prevent this from even being a risk or a hazard in the first place?
Yeah. And there's actually a situation that arose here in Boise. Excuse me. There was a situation that arose here in Boise that actually caused the film permit, allegedly, the film permit process.
I feel like that's still sort of kind of rumor. I think it's allegedly. Yes.
Allegedly, but if you're not taking into account, your surroundings and the impact that it has, especially if you're doing something like running around with even a fake gun.
Yeah.
And you're doing that in public and you haven't gotten all the notifications out there to the neighborhood and the police department, it may lead to some serious issues.
Yes. Yes, it can. Though, and I know we're going to talk about this a lot more later, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Film Fights with Friends podcast now.
Okay.
Just because I really want to use one of their set safety suggestions.
Oh, absolutely.
Here. So we have reached out on Instagram. So go ahead. If there's somebody you admire on Instagram, just send them the dang message and see what happens. You never know. Because despite the fact that Sambo Steve is sometimes his nickname, I guess.
Yeah.
But Steve, who's known for things like John Wick 2 and 3, The Walking Dead, Blacklist, like just the IMDb profile is huge.
He's a stunt coordinator.
Yes, in New York.
And their podcast is about, it's two stunt coordinators chatting about what it's like to work as stunt coordinators in Hollywood. Yeah. And podcast is super cool, very informative, very edifying for us, especially that we don't work on Hollywood sets, but also great people to talk to about set safety, because usually they're the spearhead of the dangerous situations on set.
They are. So they're very passionate about safety, which is awesome. So it was really nice that when just, our little Idaho podcast for indie filmmakers reaches out and said, hey, we would love to chat safety with you. And they say, yes, absolutely, let's hop on a call. So that was really cool. But Steve had one really good suggestion that I'd never even thought of before, because I do often think about calling police departments before I film, just the non-emergency dispatch line to let them know, hey, this is happening, or you've warned your neighbors or people in a neighborhood where you're filming before about things happening.
Yeah, we had a gun waving around and we didn't want the police called on us.
Yes.
So
good call.
that's a hack if you want to do something gnarly in your neighborhood, I guess. Just call the police department.
Just call the police and let them know ahead of time. But call your local hospital too. If you have a specific scenario, or you have a specific person, or like his example specifically was working with somebody who was older, an octogenarian.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about it.
We'll just keep all the names.
We'll keep the names out of it. We'll keep the names out of it. And Steve, if you're watching and you want to comment the names and drop some of that stuff, then you go for it, because that would be cool. But call your hospital and tell them what your scenes are going to be, what your potential emergencies are going to be. And apparently they actually really appreciate that kind of a heads up.
Yeah.
So I just thought, oh, that's really smart. So if you're going to stage a car accident of some sort,
Yeah.
call them and say, hey, we're faking a car accident. We've got all this other stuff set around it. It should be very safe. We're taking all the necessary precautions. But just so you know, we'll have, a young child and an old woman in a car faking a car accident. And if we have an emergency, you're the nearest hospital. We're coming to you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really nice. Just give people a heads up. That was cool.
Additional safety net. Before we get into some of the gnarly stuff, I do want to give one more example that happened on a 48-hour film set that I was working on. I was doing sound on that one. We were just shooting this very simple short film for 48-hour film festival, and we needed a prop, which ended up being a knife. The idea was this murder robot was supposed to have a lot of different tools of mayhem on this table before they tortured this victim. And we weren't even going to use the knife in any way that would be dangerous towards the other actor, but we wanted the actor that was on camera to basically unsheath and resheath the knife.
Yeah.
And we thought, no big deal.
We'll use a real knife for this.
We'll use a real knife. Not like all you have to do is pull it in, push it back into the sheath. No big deal. She almost stabbed her hand because it slipped funny and stuff like that happens. And if she would have caught her hand when she missed resheathing, it would have caused some pretty gnarly cuts.
It would have been painful.
Possibly stitches because it was a very sharp hunting knife. So just be real careful out there because it is just those little things that you don't even think of. It's like we're basically doing nothing with this. If you have something sharp on set, if you're not being careful, somebody has like one clumsy moment, somebody's could end up getting cut. And if they need stitches, that's not cheap.
That's not cheap. And I'm also going to throw this out there. Nowadays, there are so many options. And no, you probably aren't going to be able to afford a props master that can make you a rubber replica of your knife that looks camera foolingly perfect. No, but you are going to have, obviously there's Amazon. That's going to have a lot of choices.
Yeah.
There's also Etsy is a great place to go because there are so many creators for props and all sorts of wild stuff and very realistic looking, especially gory stuff if you're into making horror films. Etsy has so many creators on there that you can go to for that. And if push comes to shove and you're really sold on using an item you already have, go to your local either kitchen supply store or knife store if you have one in town.
Yeah.
And they have the ability to dull that knife for you. You can at least sand it down so that it doesn't have that live edge on it. It's still going to be probably a heavy and don't shove it into somebody's soft bits kind of weapon. It's still dangerous, but at least you're taking some steps to lessen the risk.
Yeah.
So you have options.
Getting those hazards reduced.
Yes.
And for those of you that are out, maybe you're in videography and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to transition into indie film, but it's mostly just going to be conversations with people at a table. Maybe you're a Richard Linklater fan or something like that. I do want to point out there's a famous example of set safety failure on 60 Minutes from 1992. They were interviewing the Clintons. Sitting
sort
on
of a
couch.
big name in 92.
Yeah, big deal in 1992. And as the Clintons were being interviewed, the entire light rack fell on the couch behind them. And in 1992, these were not LED lights.
No.
They were probably scaldingly hot and exceedingly heavy.
Did the couch catch on fire?
It did not catch on fire.
Okay, good.
But they were terrified for their lives. And this is 60 Minutes interview stuff. Obviously, somebody was not careful when they were assembling the light structure.
Wrong. Yeah, something just fell through the cracks.
So make sure that your set safety step number 1, you have your C-stands or all your stands weighted properly so that
Sandbags.
They don't fall over.
Sandbags are so important.
And tape your cords down or have them out of the way so that they're not a tripping hazard. That's real simple stuff that you want to pay attention to, and that can catch anybody on any set. I was working for a large tech firm. I don't want to say the name of it. And they had a giant jib that I was required to use for live broadcasts. It had a Sony FX9 on the one end of it, and I want to say the counterweight was somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 pounds on the opposite end of this jib. So there was a lot of weight on that, plus the tripod that it was on.
Yeah.
And it was on wheels. I was filming a live broadcast, and there was a knob in the middle of the presentation floor. Just this small little bump that was not perfectly even. So as I was moving in for a close-up on somebody, one of the wheels caught this uneven surface on the floor, and the entire jib went down.
Oh.
And I saved the camera. I don't know why I cared about saving the camera, but like the instinct
Because your
hits
gut
you.
instinct is, this is so much expensive gear, I cannot let it fall.
Yeah, so I'm holding that. One of the other camera ops rushes from his end of the area, locks down his shot, rushes. They switch cameras to that camera and helps me get the jib back up because I couldn't lift it myself
that had to be
without dropping the actual camera onto the ground, which would have toasted probably about, at that time, like a $20,000 FX9 setup. So just a little tiny bump in the floor, which I didn't know was there. I didn't realize it was a hazard. It caught the wheel. The way that the jib was set up, like the tripod is built to like kind of collapse.
Yeah.
And it wasn't locked down properly. And so it just, the base collapsed. The entire thing went over on its side. And yeah, it was almost real expensive. Didn't throw my back out.
I'm glad that you were okay, and the person that came over too was like, at least it didn't fall onto either of you, because I feel like that also would have been really painful.
Oh yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. You
That's
got to be
not
careful
great.
with that. I mean, that's one of those things too. Doing a lot of boom operation, you always want to know where the other end of your boom pole is.
Yeah, keep an eye on it, because sometimes you can
poke
get
someone's eye out.
You get real wild with it.
I almost knocked over a camera one time. That would have been pretty bad.
That would have been a little rough.
Yeah,
That would have been a
you
little rough.
Watch out where the other end of your boom pole is. Watch out where the other end of the jib is. Make sure you're aware of it.
No, 9 times out of 10 still, I because I'm allowing that one just in case it's somebody I don't like. I would rather hit a camera than a person.
True.
No, 10 times out of 10. Always hit the gear, never a person.
Good call. Good
Though,
call.
okay, so the theme of this episode specifically is taking inspiration from horror films.
Yes.
And I do want to mention 2 horror films.
Okay.
That had a lot of misconception or scandal or things about them.
Okay.
So the first one is from 1978, Faces of Death.
Ooh, I've heard of that one.
You said you'd seen that one, is that right?
I believe so. Is that the clip show or is that?
Yeah.
That's a clip
well,
show.
I haven't actually seen it, but supposedly it's been banned in several countries. Not in the U.S., but it has been banned in several countries because it does show actual depictions of death.
Yeah.
And then some of them are staged and some of them are not, but it is actual people dying. And so it's kind of like, that's a little rough. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah,
That's
we
a
had
little rough.
high school that came out on DVD when I was in high school, and so somebody rented it. Because they got a copy in our small town like DVD rental place, and so
The Blockbuster knockoff.
a group of us in high school had to watch it and just to see what it was all about. And a lot of them were fake, but I had to look up later on that some of the actual deaths were real.
They were real.
There's
That
a
was-
famous politician that committed suicide on camera on a live broadcast. And I guess that would have been early 70s, I imagine. So that, yeah, it's pretty gnarly. It's definitely a snuff film.
Yeah, I don't need to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the subject of snuff films, since we're going that direction with this apparently, since that's what safety brings up, Cannibal Holocaust from 1980 was banned because it had such realistic depictions of animal cruelty as well as deaths
Yeah.
that it's found footage style.
Okay.
So that makes it even more believable that people were positive it was a snuff film. So much so that the director Ruggero Deodato, Italian, when returning to Italy after filming, was actually charged with murder for his actors because these deaths were so believable.
Dang.
Thankfully, he was, those charges were dropped when he was able to, bring the still living actors back. But I think it's kind of wild that, on sets like Django Unchained, you'll hear about somebody like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes.
Whoops. I
Also
can't pronounce
Italian.
any name. I can't pronounce any names. What do I know? Squeezing the glass and cutting his hand.
Yeah.
And sort of that sort of thing being like, "Oh wow, look at the impressive way that he powered through that scene." Which, to be fair, yes, is very impressive that you can power through a scene, because I would have freaked out. My hand is bleeding. But then when you fake the injury so well, you're charged with murder.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a weird dichotomy. I don't know if I love it.
That's kind of a wild one.
Obviously, two very extreme examples there. But
speaking of snuff films,
yes,
I was looking up examples of famous Hollywood actors being injured on set for this podcast specifically. And Passion of the Christ, which is kind of probably in the vein of that horror film you just
Cannibal Holocaust.
It was probably in the vein of that snuff style film, at least in my opinion. But apparently, Jim Caviezel, he was struck by lightning, he claims, twice on that film set.
Oh my God.
And you can see an interview of him online. He got hit by one of the whips, actually caught him on one of the takes.
Oh, God.
He was suffering shoulder injuries while he was carrying the cross. If you look at the interview that he had after that filming, he was actually kind of a little bit like, I guess I would call it like he was having a religious experience on set. So definitely felt like he was communicating with God. It's a pretty good one, and I don't know if the lightning strike caused some of that damage to his brain to where he felt like he was communicating with God on the set. But
I don't know. You know what? That's between him and his God.
Yeah,
that's
what
that's between.
Was excited about the suffering that he had in this interview on the set, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe Mel Gibson should have just been a little bit more careful.
Yeah,
because if you see the lightning. If I see lightning and thunder and I have my boom pole out, I'm hiding.
Like I'm setting the boom pole down?
Yes.
Preferably in my truck with rubber tires?
Yes.
And I'm walking away.
No, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. And he claims that he got struck by lightning twice. I don't know.
I can't imagine the human body surviving that.
It does a lot of damage to your
I can't imagine
system.
getting struck by lightning twice and then thinking God likes you.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
God bless you. With a lethal amount of electrons.
So, covering the accidents is always when people live and are okay.
Yeah.
Covering the accidents is always sort of entertaining your war stories, so to speak, that you get to tell.
Yeah.
But in the effort of preventing some accidents,
Yeah.
Steve also specifically mentioned the hierarchy of controls.
Oh, yeah.
Which
That's
is a really
great
cool
resource.
way to approach it. And you can Google that. It's a pyramid shape. And at the very top, you start with eliminate. So if, let's say the scene is a car crash, perfect. Do you actually need the car crash? Are you sure this is vital to your story? Is there any way to eliminate this? If no, perfect. You go to your next step. Substitute. Wonderful. Let's cut away and show a reaction shot and throw some great sound foley over the top of a car accident happening, but we only see the reaction on the person's face. We don't have to actually do it. We don't have to actually film it. If that won't work, okay. 3, engineer. So we're going to set up a roll cage and we're going to get this to be the most precise car accident that has ever existed in the history of car accidents, so we know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. Do the math, calculate the speed that they're going to impact and the possible ramifications,
Yes.
which I have known nothing about.
No.
So if you're going to be doing this, make sure you have an expert on your set.
Get an actual engineer or hire OK Go because they are very precise in their music videos.
Good point.
The next step would be policy. So train your team and make sure everybody understands exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
All the details that you need to go through and make sure that everyone is on the same page and very clear about things. And then, of course, PPE is your last step, which is
Personal protective equipment.
yeah, grab your helmet. But it's your last ditch effort because you've tried to mitigate this risk in every other way possible. You shouldn't be going to a helmet first when you have somebody jumping off a building.
Yes. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's how people get injured.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actually famous, you can look it up. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's really sad, but you can look up famous stunt people and actors who have died because they're completing these stunts and they don't have the mat set up correctly.
Or they just miss it by an inch or something changes. Even Steve had an example of doing one of those dead man where they just stop suddenly by getting pulled backward.
Oh, he was
and
being
then,
lifted into a spaceship, which was the scene. I believe, right?
No, he was jumping off a cliff.
Oh, that's right.
And he had stopped in all the takes that they had done as a test run. And then they were like, actually, no, don't stop. It doesn't make sense for you to stop. You should keep running and we'll just pull you back while you're running.
And he missed
And
his
suddenly
pads.
that changed the entire force of it and he completely missed the pads.
Yeah.
So
Scary.
It is. That's terrifying. But I think those are the really big things. Though I will say one other thing Steve mentioned that I was really excited about was there are finally going to be new standards
Yes.
for weapons on set. The first time we've ever had a national standard set to it, which means that if there's an OSHA investigation, they have a national standard to look to.
Yeah.
But it's probably not going to be in SAG contracts. It's probably not going to change a lot of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. But at least it's a step in the right direction. It says that there is something that needs to be called attention to, and it's something that, everyone can look towards as guidelines and has a lot of cool options for, like, if you need a breakaway brick, maybe it should be made of like gypsum instead of concrete.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
And those will be coming out hopefully soon.
Hopefully in the next year or so, it
And
can get ratified and go into effect.
It's going to take a while. So in the meantime, try to be safe. Keep an eye out for those, though, because you do want to take extra care to make sure that nobody gets hurt on set. Another
Yeah.
thing we forgot to mention is just try not to do such long shoot days, because how many people get exhausted, and if it's a long drive home, they end up falling asleep at the wheel.
They do. And you need to let people rest. You
Mm-hmm.
do. You have to. And there's 14-hour days back to back to back. It's rough.
Yeah. We're just playing pretend here, folks. That's
Yeah.
what filmmaking is all about.
You're making entertainment. So a good day is when everybody has fun, when you make the art you want to make,
Yeah.
and everyone makes it home to their loved ones safely.
Good point.
That's a good filming day. Though I guess there was one other little tidbit as far as student filmmakers go, and if anybody knows the details on this one specifically, they can correct me here.
Yeah.
But if you are applying for a SAG contract as a student filmmaker, you have the ability to not necessarily pay some stunt coordinators their full rate. Not that you should not pay them, but you can coordinate with a stunt coordinator. Whoops, that wasn't a great word choice. But you can coordinate with them to find a price that works for all of you. And then you can apply for a waiver through SAG to say, hey, this is the stunt coordinator that's agreed to come on. They're really good at their stuff. They've agreed to do it for this pay. Is that okay? And SAG is saying yes to that now. So I would say, if they're doing that for student filmmakers and you're an indie filmmaker, but you're looking to get that SAG logo and status on your film, just give it a shot and try. Don't say, oh, we're not going to do a stunt coordinator because we can't afford it, so we'll just make it work without one. No, at least try. At least try and apply for the waiver and see what happens. Because it would
I
be
have a
better
friend
to see.
who is a black belt and yada, 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 but do they know how to fake a fight scene?
Yeah, and an on-set medic maybe isn't somebody that was a lifeguard for a summer, so they know CPR and that's enough.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe that's not enough.
Yeah, be careful out there. Anything else
Yeah.
that you want to add to this?
I think those are the big ones. Just stay safe, have fun, make cool movies, don't die.
I think on that we should have a succinct farewell.
Sounds great.
Bye.
Bye.